Welcome to the Business of Design podcast. I'm Cheryl Horn, Director of Operations for Business of Design. And this week I decided to give Kimberly the week off. That's right, I can do that. She is traveling and the break is much deserved, as I'm sure you would agree. So this week we don't do it often, but we are going to do a repeat episode. Around this time, maybe it was summer last year, we introduced you to Larry Goldberg, who's Business of Design's and our BOD Boss Group's CFO. So it was a really great episode. We got such amazing feedback on it, but we are gearing up for this year's Boss Group, and we have an information session coming up on May 4th at 1 p.m. EST, answering all of your questions and giving you more information about those Boss Groups. So as we lead up to that, as we lead up to the kickoff to the actual group, we wanted to share this episode with you once again. So before I jump into the episode, I also want to mention our next BOD live meeting, because it's tomorrow. We're focusing on commercial projects. So for those of you who primarily do commercial projects or do residential but take on the additional or occasional commercial project, we do get a lot of questions about how the BOD 15 applies to those commercial projects, if there's any differences, how that process works specifically in terms of the intake process, how it translates between residential and commercial. So we're going to be answering all those questions. Again, that's BOD Live tomorrow, April 13th at 1 p.m. EST. If you're a Business of Design member or would like to join us for that, we will see you then. Of course, the recording of that will be available for the next month following that live meeting. So hopefully you can also join us for the BOD Boss information session. Again, that's happening on May 4th, and details for these and all of our events are at businessofdesign.com. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, you fabulous interior design professional. I'm so glad you're here because we got some things to talk about. And you're about to meet Business of Design's very own CFO, Larry Goldberg. But before you do, I'm going to talk to you about jeans. My jeans in particular, the jeans that are hanging in my closet. See, even having said that, I just think, am I a loser? Do people hang their jeans? I've got my jeans hanging. Maybe that's weird. We have no secrets. What can I say? Have you ever looked in your closet and thought, I know exactly which jeans would look great with this jacket or this top? And then you reach for a different pair of jeans. Why? Because you know darn well those jeans are going to be too tight. I already know it. I don't have to try them on and torture myself. So I just go, no, you know what? Not today. I'm going to wear these other jeans over here, these comfier jeans. I'm just going to avoid those skinny jeans today. And then I'm going to avoid them this whole week, in fact. And then I'm going to avoid them for the entire month. And before you know it, a year goes by and I'm like, I think I should get rid of those jeans because they're never going to fit again. Oh my gosh. I hope you can relate to me. This is rather pathetic if not. But anyway, I'm letting you in the unfiltered part of my foolish brain. So please be kind. And if this is familiar, maybe you can also understand how you might do the exact same thing with your financial metrics. I did for years. I knew I should delve into my profit and loss statement. I knew there was important information there that might have saved me years and years of lackluster profits and embarrassment. But it was always tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month, as soon as this project is over, as soon as the holidays are over, as soon as the pandemic's over. Ay. I recently heard someone say that procrastination is the art of keeping up with yesterday. And oh my gosh, that just hit me right between the eyes. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that described a certain complacency that I felt a couple years ago. My business is functioning well. My profitability is great. I met my profit goals. I met the number I didn't think was possible to meet. Yay, I had arrived. And, for a certain amount of time, it's okay to revel in that. It's okay to be content. But when you linger too long in the land of status quo, you can find yourself in another place, a not very good place, a place of stagnation. Procrastination as the art of keeping up with yesterday. So I did a whole bunch of things. I took improv. You guys heard me talk about my improv classes, and I miss them so much. I haven't been able to do them during the pandemic. I took Spanish classes, and I still take Spanish classes, and I'm still terrible at it. But it helped shake something loose in me, and I thought, there's so much more I want to learn. And then I realized I need to learn more in my business. Just because I've arrived at a certain level of success, that doesn't mean that my business is operating optimally. And don't I deserve to find out just how far I could go if everything was firing on all cylinders at all times? So I hired a CFO. It's something I thought about for so many years. So many times I thought, I wish I was a bigger corporation and then I would just hire a CFO and I would know exactly what to do. And I finally did that. I wanted to know specifically, am I maxed? Has my business reached its optimum level? Is there anything I could do that would impact the financial health of my business? And the answer, unsurprisingly, was yes, there's a lot I could do. And I can tell you right now that today, right now, my business is not fully optimized, but I'm working on it. And that has motivated me and propelled me to consider that I might not be the only one who's hit a plateau. There might be other Business of Design members who are so excited that they've come so far, and yet 2, 3, 4 years into it, is there more I can do? And the answer is there truly is more you can do, and we want to be a part of that. In fact, that feeling, that motivation is what prompted us to completely revamp the programming in Business of Design. We could have kept going forever. Members were using the program and loving the program, but we made it better, stronger, more efficient, more accurate. I'm so proud of the work we did. And then we turned our attention to launching boss level membership, because I know that if you're anything like me, you might have reached a certain level, whatever that level is, and you want more. So those of you who have signed up for boss level membership, you're going to be in really good hands with Larry Goldberg as your CFO as well. He's my CFO, and now he's going to be your CFO. And those of you who aren't inside the membership yet, you still get to meet Larry. Of course you do. Because our goal at Business of Design is to improve the industry one designer at a time. And we do that in a variety of ways, including this podcast. So we really appreciate the fact that you're here and you're listening. And one day we know we're going to convince you to do the next right thing and join the membership or join a boss group, because it will change your life. I 100% guarantee it. In this episode, as I said, you're going to meet Larry Goldberg. He's someone I've known for many years. He and his wife have been interior design clients of mine. We did a home for them in the city. We did a home for them in the country. And they're wonderful people. And Larry is one of these people who you know exactly what he thinks about everything. He never hides behind false diplomacy. He just tells you how he feels. And so you know exactly where you stand with him. And I've always admired that about him. I also knew that he was a professional CFO, and he's worked for many startups. He's worked for companies you've heard of. He's worked for companies I've admired for sure. And so it took me a long time to work up the courage to ask him if I could talk about my business. I was very grateful he didn't just slam the phone down on me, but instead he took my questions very seriously. And that led to me hiring him for KSDG, Kimberley Seldon Design Group, and for Business of Design. He's on board to push me toward the next goalpost. Wait a minute. I don't like sports metaphors. We started with jeans. Is there a clothing metaphor? He's here to push me toward a designer label and out of the Target brand. Maybe that's better. And now he's going to do the same thing for you. In this episode, Larry's going to talk about why it's important to measure a variety of metrics and then to check on them with regularity. That's going to allow you to use the information as an agent for change in your business, making small tweaks as you go to get big results. These changes are what's going to improve your business directly as it impacts you and your family and your community. So it's no small feat.
Welcome to the Business of Design podcast with Kimberley Seldon. Business of Design is the world's best business training for interior design professionals like you. We have the systems, strategies, and protocols you need to consistently satisfy clients, increase profitability, and run your projects like a boss. Unlike traditional coaching, BOD is a fast track to immediate results. Don't try to do this alone. Join today and you'll have access to hundreds of targeted training modules, plus member perks like BOD Live events, member-only podcasts, preferred pricing, and the support of an engaged community of peers. We all know design matters. At Business of Design, we think designers matter too.
Well, hello. Hey, Larry, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Kimberly?
Everything is good over here. I was excited to talk to you. For those of you who don't know Larry Goldberg, we are very excited to have you on Team BOD. We've been looking for you for a while, Larry. Where have you been?
Hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. So, Larry, tell everybody your background, and then I'll explain why we needed you at Business of Design.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'm a CPA, and I have a 40-year career working in a very large variety of businesses, from startups to large public companies, and in a really wide variety of industries. Started off my life in the software business. I've worked in energy storage companies, organic food companies, financial services companies, and so on. So a really wide-ranging set of experience. And now I'm looking forward to working with you in a whole new business, which is the design business.
You know, it's funny. For so many years, when I first was struggling to run my business, I kept looking for a coach who was from the interior design community. And that was disastrous because they had none of the outside experience you're talking about, which would have taught them how to run any business. And so with you, I was so excited you'd never had any interaction except personally, I guess, with interior design professionals. And what have you found so far? What's struck you about what you've learned about our industry?
Well, first of all, I have dealt, as you mentioned, with designers in many personal projects, my wife and I, over the years, and they're all different personalities for sure. But I think they certainly gave the impression, and I didn't delve very deeply into their businesses, but they all gave the impression of being very, very good designers, and for the most part, not very good business people. And one of the things I've learned over the years in dealing with so many different sizes and types of companies is they all have a lot of things in common. Obviously, they're all different. It's like, all the animals on the planet are pretty different, but they all breathe oxygen. And so it's the same in business. And the fun thing for my career has been seeing how different businesses operate, how each different business can be optimized, because they are all different. But as I said, they all have a lot of commonality.
We were looking for someone who could help our community get to the next level in terms of their financial savviness, in terms of their profitability. And I felt I had gone as far as I could go on my own steam, which is pretty far. And then I realized, just because I'm comfortable with where I'm at, that doesn't mean that's where I should stay. And that might be true for somebody else who's listening. So we thought, let's get in a real financial expert to show us how to tweak what we have to make it stronger and to make it better. And I was actually surprised as we started working together that I need to do more than tweak. There's quite a bit more that I have learned in the last year or so as we have been speaking. So let's talk about one of my favorite things I've learned from you, and it's your mantra that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Why don't you unpack that for everybody?
Sure. The key to any business is to set and achieve financial goals. And there's, of course, things around that. There's different stakeholders in businesses and so on, and being, socially correct and environmentally proper and so on. But the real focus, at least for this podcast, is looking at the financial side of a business. And it really starts at the highest level, which is to set some financial goals, for the business. And that could be growth goals. In the simplest case, it could be just profitability. And in the case of most designers, which are mostly small businesses, sometimes single person businesses, and sometimes a little bit bigger than that. And of course, there's ones that are very large. But the prime goal for any business is profit. It's easy to look at that one number and decide whether you're happy with it. And whether or not you're happy with it, that doesn't mean that you've optimized where the business could be. And the only way to do that is to measure how the business is doing, so that you can then manage the business properly to achieve or exceed the financial goals. So the first question is, what should be measured? Again, the simplest ones for most people, and I think it's probably the one or two measures that most small business people measure are revenue, how much money is being taken in, and profit, how much is left at the end of a time period. Typically, people look at it, at the end of a year. How much money did the business make for them to enjoy? And that's not enough, because if the business didn't do what you thought it should do or what goals you set, and you haven't really looked at the details of the business, then you have no way of knowing why it did or didn't achieve the goals and what you can do about it.
So let me interject here, because there's a couple of things I'm thinking, particularly if I think back to what it was like when I started out, even 15 years ago. In my mind, why set a goal for profitability? Why do that? Because my profitability was completely at the mercy of how many clients I got and how much money they spent. I felt powerless to do anything about. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I just felt powerless. I can't impact my profitability. Can I?
Most definitely. And again, that gets to the measurement of the metrics, the key metrics of the business. And it's the details. It's sort of the devil's in the details. Every business, every type of business has key metrics, key things that indicate the health of the business. And whether it's a small, relatively simple business, like many interior design practices, or really complex businesses like an airline, they all have key metrics that need to be set and measured so that action could be taken. And I'll come to that after, but action is the management side. So some examples. We talked a few minutes ago about the obvious ones being, revenue or overall profit. But now, how can we drill down? How can you, as a designer, drill down into those very gross measures? So in a design business, for example, you can take a look at how your revenue is split by type. Your design fees, charges for consultations that you might do, project management fees, product sales, and so on and so on. So it's not just one big number, but there's actually a lot of very important components to it.
So you want to be tracking those numbers independently. They shouldn't just be one lumped sum.
Very much so. And we'll talk in a little bit why it's so important to do that. And again, if we just use an airline example, they don't just look at, American Airlines doesn't look at its total revenue. Well, it does, but it looks at very significant details within that. What are the ticket sales? So that's one class of revenue, and they'll definitely break that down by the cabin class, how much business class versus economy class, what their onboard food and liquor sales are, what baggage fees do they charge. They want to know to the penny what they're earning from each of these areas, because they want to maximize revenues from each of these areas. So they might say, I'll increase my baggage fees by 5 cents a bag, and that turns into millions of dollars of revenue and things like that. So similarly on the design side, which is obviously what we're talking about here, by looking at each of the revenue types, you could start to understand the business much better than looking at the fact that you had revenue of $150,000 this year.
Okay, that makes sense to me. But you said, okay, so they have ticket sales, which I'm going to say is similar to design fees for all your projects, whether you do flat fees or whether you do an hourly fee contract, design fees and ticket sales. But then you said they would also examine of those ticket sales customers by class, first class, economy, business class. And that makes me wonder, how does that translate into my business? Is it worthwhile for me to track a customer's profitability as a standalone?
Well, profitability is a bit of a different thing, but even just taking your question but applying it to the revenue discussion. So in a design business, again, we talked about now breaking out various types of revenue, design fees, and so on. And so one way of looking at your revenue might be looking at the ratio between the different types of revenue. So you might have design fees revenue of some number of dollars per year. But with that, in other words, that's your activity, that's your hourly rate that you're charging. But with that given amount of activity, that number of hours times your rate, and that's your revenue on design fees. But are you generating the right, and I put sort of right in quotes, the right amount of product sales? Are you charging enough for consultations and so on? So you can't, if you just look at your revenue and say it's 150,000 this year, and that clearly wasn't where it should have been, unless you're able to now break that down to the different forms of revenue and start to understand how you can change it so you improve it, you're just looking at one big blob and you're not going to be able to do much with it.
Okay.
So again, I just want to come back to just because I think people will understand it, in an airline, they no doubt take a look at food revenue and liquor revenue per passenger, and they have targets for that. They know that they should be selling, $20 per passenger, and if it's less, then they will figure out how to get it to the levels that they need to get it, because they're bringing that food on board. There's costs and so on and so forth.
Right. So I'm sitting there and they're thinking, 3B, we're going to sell this woman some peanuts. So they come by with a cart. They try new things to get me to buy those peanuts.
100%. Or they might give away peanuts because now they're going to sell more bottles of water or more alcohol or more beer.
As a young designer, I would have found this mercenary. I would have said, oh, I don't want to be like that. I just want to help people. I just want to do my best work. And that'll keep you broke for a long time. So it's okay to be profitable, right? Even if you're a single solopreneur and you really want to make clients happy and you love what you do, it's still okay to be profitable and to get sophisticated like this.
Profitability and doing good work aren't in contention with each other. They're actually they're companions. If you do good work, then there's two possibilities. You'll either run a healthy business and make profit, or you won't. And it depends on how you manage the business side. But making profit is not a bad thing. Making profit is what you're in business for. But it doesn't mean that you can't do your best work. And in fact, you should do your best work. And if you do your best work, you will be very profitable. If we look at the best, the most profitable companies, I like to pick on Apple. Apple makes products that are just phenomenal, or at least that's my opinion, and they're obscenely profitable. That doesn't make them a bad company. It makes them a company that provides fantastic products and services and does it in a way that they're enormously profitable. Why can't the designer do that?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I guess somehow when I started, it felt like there was a great divide between little old me running my decorating business and Apple. And what I hear you saying is a business is a business is a business, and all businesses deserve to be fulfilling and profitable at the same time.
That is why a business exists. A business exists to serve its customers well and properly, and to serve its owners, which in the case of a big company are shareholders, and in the case of a small design firm is the designer, deserves to be profitable for them. And again, they don't act against each other. If you're really good at what you do as a designer, and as providing excellent results for your clients, you deserve to be way more profitable than than the next designer.
I know some of you listeners are like, oh, give me a break. Of course, I want to be more profitable. And that's fair enough. But there are lots of designers who have an attitude that was something like mine, like, oh, I've achieved a certain amount of success. This is enough, right? On some level, I imagined that my business could only be so big and so profitable. And that just wasn't accurate. And unfortunately, the narrative I told myself is the result I got. We have to track that revenue in specific categories so that we can then turn around and take action to impact it.
Exactly. So, the first step is you measure it and you analyze it and you make decisions as to, what went wrong or what can be changed. So using the example I used for designers, where there's some reasonable ratio between the design fees revenue you're charging and the product sales that you're generating, and obviously there's profit in those sales. And I know the business of design model addresses product sales and so on, and how they're done properly and transparently. Just there's nothing wrong, and I had no trouble paying the good designers we've dealt with for product sales and getting product through them, and knowing that they were making money on those products, but I was benefiting. So I had no problem with that. So as the design firm's owner or manager, being your business of design members, you need to understand where you want to take those various revenue items in relation to each other, and that then leads to the obvious one, which is profitability. So it's one thing to generate tons of revenue, and if you're losing money, then you need to stop and figure it out. One of my favorite quotes is, if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. So selling, you're not going to, if you're losing money in your business, selling more, working harder, generating more fees, all that means is you're probably going to lose more money, not less. You got to take a step back and figure it out. So with profitability, again, you want to look at it in detail. So look at the bottom, as it's called, profitability, the bottom line at the end of the year, and realize that you either didn't make nearly as much money as you had hoped, or maybe lost money, which is a worst case scenario, or maybe you made way more money than you expected. Like, it could be positive, but because then there's things you can learn from the positive results. So you need to understand, just like where revenue is coming from, you need to understand profitability, where the profit is coming from. And there's lots of ways to analyze profitability. So, one example is by type of revenue. So I believe that for a design business to look and analyze profitability for each of your separate projects is absolutely critical, because by understanding those projects where you made great profit, is just as important as understanding those projects where maybe you lost money. And I guarantee, I shouldn't say guarantee, but I'd be pretty surprised if you haven't, or if designers haven't had projects where they've lost money. And so you need to understand why that would be and take action going forward so that you improve the profitability on each and every project. So, for example, with a particular project where it was either less profitable than you'd expect, it might be that you had to credit, or you felt, or you did credit back some of your design fees for some of your hours. It might be a particular type of client that you start to see a trend that, it's a big client, it's a small one, it's this type of house, whatever it is, that you're just, for whatever reason, aren't profitable like certain other of your projects. You might have lost money on some of the product sales. It might be something as simple as you forgot to invoice, or you chose not to invoice because of something that went on in that project. You felt that you made some mistakes, and that's okay. But at least you understand it so that you don't repeat those errors, and profitability in each of your projects improves. Another would be if you happen to have other designers working for you, or maybe ask people and so on, what's the profitability per person? If you've got a designer that you're paying a salary, how many hours have they billed out? What has been their revenue? Maybe you're making a small amount on a particular individual, which either means, well, it can mean a lot of things. It can mean you just haven't generated enough business to keep that person busy enough, and maybe you shouldn't have them on staff at this point in time in the life of your business. Maybe you're paying them too much for their skill set. Maybe the type of client you have doesn't support having additional people on the project, and so on and so on. There's no pat answers to any of these questions, but it's critical that you ask the questions.
It's kind of like weighing yourself once a month. The number may not be what you like, but at least you can do something about it.
Exactly. And that's actually sort of my next point that I wanted to make. We said if you can't measure it, you can't manage. So then the question is, what does manage mean? What does it mean to manage? And in the simplest form, to manage is to take action that improves the business of results to ensure that your financial goals are met. And so it's very important to start off with financial goals. How many projects do you want to take on? How much profit do you want to generate for yourself? Keep in mind, profit for a single owner business, or maybe a partnership, profit is money in your pocket. It's not this sort of amorphous thing like for a public company. This is money that you then get to reinvest in the business, or live on, or enjoy, or put away for your retirement.
And for many years, I considered, I took my salary out of profit. And so I would have some kind of sad profit line. And that was not profit. That ended up being the salary I had for the year. And we're not going to even go down that rabbit hole, because I know a financial advisor might tell you to take your salary at the end for specific tax reasons. But in fact, when I talk about profitability, I talk about something that doesn't include my salary. It's the discretionary money left over at the end of the year that I can just do whatever I want with.
Yeah, and it's however you choose to define it, and everybody will do that differently. But the reality is that the business, sort of altruistic reasons aside, the reason you're running a business is to generate profit for yourself, generate good results for your clients, but generate profit for yourself, for your family, for your future, and so on. So the first step in running a business is to set goals for the business. But for the purpose of this conversation, it's the financial goals. And those could be whatever you want them to be. It could be a certain growth level. You want to increase your revenues 10% a year. You want to increase your profit. You want to generate $100,000 of profit this year, and so on. So that's the starting point, is to set out what you want to achieve as a business, not as a designer, but as a business. And so, for example, you might say that, I want to generate $100,000 next year in profit. And let's say by the end of the year, you only generated $80,000 a year. So you want to, in order to fix it, you want to understand, what happened, what went wrong, what can I do to improve? And as we talked about in the last, few minutes, if you haven't measured any of the details that, we talked about or touched on, then there's no action you can take to improve, other than maybe you'll work harder. If I worked only another 20 hours a month, I'll get to that $100,000 of profit.
And then you can pour fuel on that fire by starting to hire more people. I'll work harder and I'll hire more people.
For sure. And that's the stop digging analogy that I used a few minutes ago. Because all you're doing there is digging yourself into more of a hole in both ways. You're working harder and probably not going to make any more money. You're hiring people, so now you're responsible for other individuals, and you've now got more expenses, and you're probably next year going to not make 80, but you'll make 20 and be working harder.
I feel like you just triggered some PTSD for me, but I'm glad you're here. Better late than never. And from your lips to God's ears, I hope everybody listening is looking at the end of the year of a profit goal of $100,000, not including salary, just a profit goal of $100,000. That certainly would be my hope for everybody. And for some of you, of course, I want that number to be much higher. That's an entry-level point. to be honest with you, and this will probably shock Larry, but it won't shock those of you listening, I never dreamed in a million years I could earn that kind of profit. It just was so far beyond the realm of anything I thought possible. And now it's automatic. It happens automatically, which is such a gift. And honestly, if it can happen for me and for so many other Business of Design members, absolutely it can happen for you. But anyway.
One last thing, and
Okay.
we talked about setting a goal of 100, come to the end of the year and it's only 80. What do I do? What can I change? And about how, if you've measured details, you can tweak, you can understand what kinds of projects are good, bad, where you're making money, where you're not. Do I have too many staff, and so on? And the one follow on to that is, don't wait to the end of the year, because then it's too late. So you should be, and you touched on this, Kimberly, where you say, you weigh yourself once a month. You don't weigh yourself at the end of the year and see how you did. You weigh yourself once a week. And if you went up a little bit, you alter what you do. And so it's really important to do these measurements on a much more frequent basis than once a year, because you then have time and runway to make changes on an ongoing basis. So if after month one, you look at your projects, the individual projects' profitability, and you start to see that certain ones are good, certain ones are bad, well, you've got 11 months now and 20 or 30, I don't know the number of projects for the rest of the year, so you can start to take action. You don't want to, worst case scenario is you haven't done anything, you've gotten 80 instead of 100 and you have no idea what to do. Next better case is you shot for 100, you got 80, but now you at least can look backwards in figuring it out. So next year you get to the 100. Best case scenario is along the way, you're doing these things and you get to the 100, or better. It's not an end of year, I'm filing my taxes, so I'll figure out how I did. It's too late. You're just not going to, you're not going to maximize what you should out of your business.
If we're going to do all this hard work and put so much love and passion into it, there ought to be a financial reward at the end of the year too. And, every single person who succeeds helps the next designer who comes along to succeed, even in a greater fashion. So Larry, thank you. You've given me a lot to think about, including how frequently I weigh myself. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Kimberly. That was enjoyable.
Thank you for being part of the Business of Design community and supporting BOD's mission to improve the industry one design business at a time. It's time for you to take the next step and join Business of Design. Like thousands of design professionals in 50 countries around the world, you'll find the systems, strategies, and protocols you need to dramatically improve your business and transform your life. What are you waiting for? Start today.